within the adjustment panel, we also have an adjustment tab. This is related to color grading. So with your clip selected, if you go over to your adjustment panel and click on adjustment, you're now greeted by a variety of color grading options. So of course you've got your basic, then from there you got your HSL, curves and color wheel. Within your basic you have the option to add a LUT. For those of you who do not understand what a LUT is, do not worry. At a really high level, this is essentially color grading packs that you can download online, and then from there you can click on the drop down menu and select a particular LUT, and then from there you can go ahead and decide how much strength that LUT or color grading pack is applied to your clip. This is not something I plan to go in depth on in this particular CapCut crash course. I just wanted to let you know that that option is there. So within the basic settings, you have your usual options for color grading. Of course, you can play around with the temperature, the hue, saturation, brightness, contrast, highlight, shadow, illumination, sharpen, particles, fade, and vignettes. I think on this particular clip, I'd like to decrease the number in relation to shadow. This actually will give me an effect where the clip itself comes across much darker. Of course, we also have the option to play around with the HSL. So if there's any reds in your clip, you can go ahead and click on red, play around with the hue, saturation, brightness, same with orange, yellow, green, so on and so forth. We also have the option to adjust the curve. So we've got the Luma curve, which will allow you to again play around with the brightness. So as you can see here, I've increased the amount of brightness that is on Leonidas's face and then decrease the amount of darkness. Doesn't really look that good, so I'll just hit Command Z and restore this back to normal. And in a very similar manner, you have the options to play around with the red, green and blue curves. Then finally you have your color wheel. So this is more advanced color grading as with the curves and HSL. Majority of you should be using basic, especially if you're using a program such as CapCut. However, I don't want to downplay CapCut's ability. I'd like to say that the options that they're giving in relation to color grading is actually pretty good, considering this is a free editing software. So again, you can steer the shadows towards a more deeper or richer color, and you can do this with the middle gray, tint, offset, etc. Now with that being said, what we're actually doing here is color grading, or as CapCut likes to refer it to as adjustment, on the actual clip. This is not the way I go about color grading or adding any level of adjustment. Usually what I prefer to do is have an adjustment panel or adjustment track. To do this, all you simply need to do is go over to your media panel, and towards the top of the bar you'll find the option adjustment. If you click on this, you'll have customize and LUT. In our case, we want to go ahead and click on customize. If you hover over the black box, you will get a add to track icon. Click this and straight away you'll notice on your track you now have adjustment 1. This is an adjustment layer that is only for color grading. So now I can expand this, I can reduce it, I can position it wherever I want over a particular clip. For some reason I feel like this clip has some type of shadow tint applied to it. Let me just get that back to 0. There we go. Click back on the adjustment layer and we have exactly the same tools we've talked about previously. I might want to reduce the amount of fade. If I pull this to an exaggerated amount such as 40 and move my playhead across the entire clip, you can see that the adjustment layer has applied that particular color grading fade across the entirety of my project. If I reduce the adjustment panel, you can now see it's only applied on that clip. If I hide the track, it'll remove the adjustment panel. So it's worth noting that if you are going to go down the route of applying some type of color grading, make sure you include an adjustment panel and then from there color grade. With that being said, for a lot of you, you might not be able to color grade that great just yet. If I remove my adjustment track and head over to my media panel, on the top bar we have an option called filters. If you click on this, within CapCut you have a whole set of features, almost like LUTs, preloaded color grading that you can just apply directly to your timeline. So let's pick something extremely obvious that we can tell straight away, such as Barbie. I'm going to click on download.
No intrinsic value. value, and it's up to you.
And then from there I'll get the option to add track. If I click this, you'll see I now have a track which is called Barbie on my timeline. If I position this over the video clip we're looking at, we can see we get this purpley pink style of tint added to the clip automatically. Obviously it's not a type of filter or color grade that we would go with, so I'm going to delete that, and instead I'm going to go ahead and perhaps look at some of the filters related to portraits, where by scrolling down I'm able to find this night scene, in particular black ice filter, which I think could go pretty well with the clip that I've got.
Zero, you have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you.
So I'll go ahead and add to track. I now have this black ice filter on my timeline, and as you can see it does work well, but it seems to be quite strong. So with the black ice filter highlighted over in my adjustment panel, you now can see we can adjust the amount of strength the filter applies to our clip. So just by dragging this, I want to get it to the point where it just slightly comes into play, so around about 50. And if you really want to get detailed with this, you can go ahead and add keyframes. So maybe at the start of the clip I actually keyframe the clip at 100 strength, and if I drag across to the point where Leonidas looks over, I can now keyframe this at perhaps 60. A few frames further down I'll keyframe at 50, and there we have it.
Nothing.
That looks
Start
pretty
from zero.
decent. Let's have a quick look at this.
Absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value.
So, super useful tools presented to you by CapCut. Make sure you use them, adjustments and filters.